Okay, perfect. Okay, so first of all, thank you all for being here. And let's start on this Zoom session on the history of Jewish Zelechow. Okay, so first of all, I want to ask the people who are here today, how many of you have been to Zelechow? If you can write in the comments would be better because we can see them. Okay, so I see that a few people have been to Zelechow, to my understanding. Okay, we have a few people who have been, some others haven't been yet. Feel like Costa Rica has been, some in Israel have been, or also as well. Okay, great. Okay, so here I'm showing you a kind of modern map that I kind of mixed and made myself that shows what Zelechow is. Okay, so this is so far the town of Zelechow or the city of Zelechow. And these are some important places that if you go to Zelechow, you won't miss, which is in the center. You're going to see the city hall, which used to be this square building. Now it looks completely different. And here today, it's a park, and this is where the synagogue used to be. But most of us, of course, know the road all the way down here to the Jewish cemetery. That is so far one of the only Jewish things that remain in Zelechow today. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the name of Zelechow. Okay, the name of Zelechow, the origin of the name is undetermined. Okay, however, some people say that it comes from Zelech, which is a short name for the Polish name Zelechow. Okay, the Poles today, they call it Zelechow. Okay, and most of us here call it Zelechow. Okay, however, as an interesting matter of fact, many Jews back in time in Zelechow used to say it Zelichov. Why? Because they said that when you write it in Hebrew, you can make 3 words out of the name Zelechow, which is Zelichov, which in English means this is my obligation. So the religious people saw it as a thing that it was their obligation to be a Jew and to fulfill mitzvot and deeds in Zelechow. So they pronounce it Zelichov instead. Okay. As some general information about the town, which we're not going to talk too much about the Polish part of Zelechow, but it was the first record we find of Zelechow is around 1325, but they only received city rights in 1447. Okay, it's very interesting that they call it city rights because for me I call it a town. However, in Polish, the word for town and city is the same, is miasto. So there's no real difference. So it's up to you if you want to call Zelechow a town or a city. The Jews used to use both words in Yiddish, shtetl and shtut. So it also city or town. So it's up to you guys, okay? A very interesting thing is that Zelechow had many owners and landlords. And the last lander of Zelechow that most of the Jews or the survivors remembered was the Ordenga family. Okay, this Ordenga family lived in a house in the north of Zelechow, separated a little bit from the city. It was called the Ordenga's Palace. Okay. Today is a very famous restaurant. Whoever has been to Zelechow, it's a nice place to stop and eat some nice lunch. But the important thing here about the landlords in Zelechow was that during the time that the Jews were in Zelechow, there was no landlord subjection, and they didn't have to pay taxes to the landlord, and they had an autonomous economic life. Okay. Now, many people always ask me, where is Zelechow located? Okay, so here I have a little map that I'm going to show. Zelechow is here, where I'm putting my mouse. Everybody sees it. Zelechow, okay. Zelechow is 90 kilometers from Warsaw. This is Warsaw, the capital. This is Zelechow, is 90 kilometers away, which is about 56 miles. Is located in the Garvolin County, okay, as has always been. And during the Russian Empire, it was part of the Siedlec gubernia, which is this state in Poland here, all this. Later, after the Russians were gone, between 1915 until the war, it was part of the Lublin gubernia. We can see the city of Lublin down here, so it was part of this. And today it's part of the Masovian voivodeship. It's called the Masovian state, which includes also Warsaw. Okay. A last thing I want to mention is that there was no train in Zelechow. There was no train station in Zelechow. The closest ones were in Lukow, which was 40 kilometers away, which is still kind of far. And the closest one was around here between these two towns that was called Sobolev. It was 21 kilometers away. So Jews had to take a wagon all the way there, and from there they took the train wherever they wanted to go. Okay. Now let's talk a little bit about the first Jews in Zelechow. Okay. It's believed, because there's no real proof, but it was said among the Jews in Zelechow that the Jews came to Zelechow in the 17th century. This is the 1600s. Okay, how this has happened? In 1648, we have in this region here, the blue region here, we had the Khmelnytsky uprising. We had some Cossack riots in this area, in these two areas here, and they forced the Jews to escape west. So they settled. So you see, they came from these two areas, the regions, and they settled here. This is where Zelechow is located. Okay. The first time we hear about a Jew from Zelechow, however, is only in 1697. We hear about a man, a rabbi who is in Germany, and his name is Yidelaib Zelechow, which means he comes from Zelechow. So that means that by then there was already most likely quite some Jews living in Zelechow. Okay. However, we can only establish that there was a community in Zelechow in 1753, when we found in one document the signature of Naftule Hiltz, which is named as the judge of the Holy Community of Zelechow in the region of Lublin. Okay, so if they had a judge back then, they most definitely had a rabbi. They had some authority, some religious authority. Okay, and we can also see that by 1765, there was already 1,400 Jews in Zelechow. Okay, now we have arrived to, let's call it the center or the volcano of the Jewish life in Zelechow. Okay, which is the history of Hasidism in Zelechow. Okay, as many of you know, the movement of Hasidism was founded by the Baal Shem Tov in the region that is today kind of Ukraine. And the Baal Shem Tov, or as we call it, the Besht, he dies in 1760. And the new leader of this movement, of this Hasidic movement, is the Maggid of Mezrich. Okay, this movement is spreading throughout all this region, and they're gathering more and more followers. And as a matter of fact, one of the followers of one of the disciples of the Maggid of Mezrich was Aaron of Karlin. And while this rabbi comes once to Pinsk, to the city of Pinsk in Belarus, he influences there the rabbi in Pinsk at that moment, and his name was Levi Yitzchak, okay, or in Hebrew Levi Yitzchak, okay. We all maybe know this rabbi by as the Berditchever Rebbe. If many of you have heard of the Berditchever Rebbe, this was Levi Yitzchak. Okay, so eventually Levi Yitzchak becomes a Chassid also in Pinsk, and he's kicked out of Pinsk, and he arrives to Zelechow. What happens in Zelechow? Zelechow is controlled by misnagdim, which means by opponents of this Hasidic movement. Back then, the rich Jews controlled the entire Jewish life in the Jewish community, and the rich Jews in Zelechow were all misnagdim, were all opponents. So imagine what is for a Hasidic rabbi to arrive in Zelechow, where all the leaders the Jewish leaders are against him. However, what happened is that as Hasidism also teaches, and as he was, Levi Yitzchak, he had great affection for the simple Jews, for the Pshita Yidden, and he gathers them as followers, he gathers them as followers, and soon they start to love him. And of course, he tells them that they don't need to be they can simply by praying with intention, with kavanah, or by saying Tehillim, by reciting some psalms with intention, is merely enough to serve God. Okay, so soon, of course, since most of the Jews in Zelechow were poor, these are the ones we call the simple Jews, starts following them. So the Misnagdim city, the opponent city of Zelechow, starts slowly becoming more open to this rabbi. The rabbi brings a few reforms. Okay, one of them, the first one, for example, was that he created some societies among the simple Jews, and he separated them in societies. He put the shoemakers in the society of shoemakers in the Hevre Shister, and he put all the Jewish tailors in the society of the tailors in the Hevre Schneider, and he separated them, and they prayed separately in different places and not in the big synagogue of Zelechow, of course. And each of these societies that he created, they had their own rules, and that's how, and it was like this until the Second World War. So it lasted for many years. Another tradition, another reform that he brought was to wear talitot in the evening of Rosh Hashanah, which means to wear the prayer shawls on the night of the New Year. We normally today only do it on Yom Kippur, but he said we should also do it on Rosh Hashanah, on Rosh Hashanah. And the Jews in Zelechow did it for many years as well. The last reform that he brought, which comes also with a story, was that he said that if a holiday falls on Shabbat, they shouldn't say Birkat Kohanim. They shouldn't do the priestly benediction on Shabbat if a holiday falls on Shabbat. And this was a kind of protection against fires. It was a superstition. It was a superstition, and they followed this superstition for almost 100 years, until a new rabbi arrived in Zelechow, and he said, "I'm new rabbi here, and I don't care what Levi Yitzchak told you 100 years ago. We're saying the Birkat Kohanim, we're saying the blessing if a holiday falls on Shabbat." And they did. And what happened was, in the year 1880, Passover, Pesach, fell on Shabbat, and they did the blessing. And on the same year, there was a fire in town. Half of Zelechow was burned, and the synagogue was burnt. Okay, so here are the superstitions that we had kind of in Zelechow. We're going to talk a little bit about the difference between rabbis and rebbes. Okay, so here I'm listing the rabbis and rebbes that Zelechow have. I'll explain soon what's the difference. Okay, so Levi Yitzchak came as a rabbi for 12 years in Zelechow. Okay, and then a new rabbi came, and then a new rabbi came. Okay, when Shia Usher Rabinovich came to Zelechow, which was, you can see, was the mid-19th century, it was the strongest time where the Hasidim, they fought with their opponents, with the Misnagdim. Was the biggest battles. They used to debate all the time. And it was the worst time because the Misnagdim, they did horrible things to the Hasidim. For example, they said that one time during Pesach, during Passover, when we're forbidden to have bread in our houses.
Are you listening?
The Misnagdim put a piece of bread under the rabbi's pillow in Pesach. So imagine how crazy it must have been. Okay, so this Shia Usher Rabinovich, he soon begins, he becomes the first Rebbe in Zelechow. He begins a dynasty of rebbes, kind of like a kingdom, let's call it like that, where the kingship or the leadership is passed from father to son. Okay, so when he dies, his son-in-law becomes Rebbe of Zelechow, and so on until the Second World War. We had these rebbes in Zelechow. Okay, however, we can see that somehow in 1887, the Zelechow community decided to bring also a rabbi, while they already had a rebbe, to separate the different functions of both rabbis. Okay, so if you were to go to Zelechow in the 1930s, you would have had two rabbis at the same time, the rebbe and the rabbi of the town, which two different functions. Okay, now, so as I told you, the synagogue was burnt in 1880, and imagine half town is burnt, and half a town is burnt, and the economic situation of the Jews is really bad, of course. They had no money to build a synagogue, so they managed to build a small wooden synagogue, but still they continue praying in private houses. Okay, this continued for like 15 years until one man called Reb Moshe Nutes, or Moshe Iglitsky, he said that he started kind of a campaign to collect money every Friday afternoon before Shabbos to build the synagogue. And he did. He collected the money. He hired an architect. And here you can see the plans of the building of the synagogue in Zelechow. Okay, the Zelechow was finished around 1895, around that time. But was sadly, of course, as we all know, it was later burned in 1939 by the Germans, and it was later demolished in 1944. Here is a picture of how the synagogue used to look. And here we have the study house, the Bas Medrash, as we call it. And a more lively picture, here it is, another beautiful picture of the synagogue. Okay, so now I have another question for you people. Have any of you heard of a man called Herschel Toker? As I say here. Anybody has heard of Herschel Toker?
Yes, me. He's my great uncle.
Oh, there you go. Anyone else? Or only the Meister family? No. Okay, so I'm gonna tell you guys a little bit about him, okay, and what's happening in Zelechow during this time. Okay, so at the beginning of the 1900s, all Zelechow is religious. Okay, it's completely religious until in 1902, the town starts seeing a few people, a few Jewish men, take off their Hasidic clothes, take off their hats, take off their kippah, take off their, and they start dressing like you can see in the picture, more modernly. Okay, so imagine how it was for all the Jews to see this men dress completely different, with no head cover, nothing, and they call them apikoirosim, which means heretics. Okay, and this apikoirosim, let's call it like that. This men, they start, of course, reading different books that are not the Torah or the Talmud. They start reading books and learning about socialism, of course, and they start preaching and spreading the ideology. So soon we're gonna see for the first time that many religious Hasidic boys and men start becoming less religious. Okay, they take off their clothes and they start joining these men. Okay, one of these men opened a tea house in Zelechow, and this becomes the gathering point of all the modern Jews. Okay, one of them, okay, Herschel Toker, this man right here in the picture, becomes their leader, the leader of the workers, the leader of all these people who are gathering here, who are more modern. He gives amazing speeches. He tells them about working rights, and slowly they build a union. Okay, and of course they start calling each other brother or sister, and of course imagine this movement, this worker movement is making the old generation, the Hasidic Jews, go crazy. Okay, in 1905 the Russian Revolution takes place. And as we know, Zelechow was back then part of the Russian Empire. So in Zelechow, we also gonna see worker strikes led by, of course, by Herschel Toker, and where they ask for a 12-hour day, working day, and not to work on Saturday nights. Back then, they had to work every Saturday night, imagine. So they only had time to rest during Shabbat, during the Saturday. And their days were completely, were very long. The working days were very long and they were paid very low. So this is what they're working for. And it works. The bosses start getting scared and frightened of the workers, and they say that if they call the police they get shot, they get hit. So the bosses in the working places, they agree to the conditions of the workers. Okay. Herschel Toker, of course, is put in prison a few times, but he's taken out eventually. Okay, and when he comes out, the Socialist Party in Zelechow, which he was kind of the leader of, they divide into two, into a PPS and into the Bund party. Okay, the majority of the Jews take the Bund side, which in let's say in simple words, it meant that in the Bund they didn't believe in God or in the emperor, but they still remain Jews, as difference of the PPS. Okay, and okay, all these events of the Jewish worker revolution in Zelechow, and all the strikes and all the events that took place were recorded by a man called Ichemaya Weissenberg. He was the first and he was the first writer, the first famous writer from Zelechow. He published in 1906 a novel called The Shtetl, the town, as a literary response to Shulam Ash novel, also called The Shtetl, published before, where he tried to show how different of a shtetl it was Zelechow. Okay, so this is the first time that Zelechow becomes a little more, I call it international, but a little more famous, and people start hearing and knowing about the town. Okay, Ichemeier dies in 1938, and this is his tombstone. He's buried in the Warsaw Jewish Cemetery. Okay. Okay, so now we're going to talk a little bit about the First World War, what's happening in Zelechow in this time, this period. History-wise, in July 28, 1914, Austro-Hungary declares war on Serbia. So then Russia, trying to protect Serbia, also declares war on Austro-Hungary. And then Germany again declares war on Russia. Okay, so we see that the Germans start advancing, as you can see in the map here. The red line is how the border was in the beginning of the war, okay, and eventually, after a year, the Germans advance up to the blue line. And they're coming from the left, they're coming from the west, okay? So this means that after a year, the Germans push back the Russians. The Russians who were there in Zelechow, they leave, and the Germans come in August 1915, okay? I want to show you a few pictures that these are some postcards that the Germans made while they were in Zelechow in 1915. Okay, so this is the church, the entrance to Zelechow. This is also the same road, but opposite of the church, the entrance of the town. You can see the people, you can see the houses. Here you can see the town. In the right, you can see Hasidic boys. This is how the house used to look. Most of the houses were wooden, made out of wood. Okay, and this is the center of the town. We can see the church here in the back, the houses around them. Okay, this is where the marketplace took place. We also see another Jew here. Another one here. So yeah, they're all around the town. This is the marketplace that I was mentioning, where the fair took place every Tuesday. And here we can see the German soldiers in Zelechow strolling through the streets. Very nice picture. And this is the palace that I mentioned you at the beginning, where the landlord, the owner of Zelechow used to live, a little secluded from the rest. There's also another picture from the town. Okay. Here's the house of Mendezhitsky family. Very famous. I feel we have somebody from the family here.
Yes, my family.
There you go. And this was the command in Zelechow. This was the house. So yeah, this were the a few of the postcards that we can see and how the town looks in 1915. Okay, so what happens when the Germans come in? Okay, when we think Germans are coming in, we think not that well, because we're remembering of World War II, but on the First World War, it was completely different. The Germans were nice, actually, to the Jews, and you have to remember that while the Russians occupied Zelechow and Poland, of course, cultural organizations were forbidden. So once the Germans are in, all these political parties, all these organizations that are working underground can finally come to the surface. Okay, so there's full liberty for these organizations now, and the Bund, the Zionist, and the Coalitionist, they can finally work openly. Okay. The Jews also have a library. They create a library with modern books, to be clear here. They open cultural schools. They bring teachers from Warsaw, and the classes are all in Yiddish. Difference. They have some. They have a theater, and as you can see here, there is a picture of the Bundis group. If I can mention some people in the picture, we have here Golda Haberman, who was in Colombia. We have Saul Hebner, who was in France. We have Sure Tischbohe, who was in Colombia. When I feel I'm not forgetting anybody. So as we can see, as we can say, the cultural life in Zelechow starts spreading in this time. Okay. How in 1918, the First World War ends. The Germans leave Zelechow after being there 3 years, and the Poles receive their independence. Okay. However, in 1920, the Polish-Soviet War begins. Okay. Jews have to be drafted, and I'll show you a little bit of what's going on. Okay, this is how Poland looks. Poland is this one, looks after World War I, and soon it starts spreading. The pole starts going east, and they reach Kiev. Okay, so once they reach Kiev, this is during the Polish-Soviet War of 1920. The Russians start hitting back. Back then, the Bolsheviks were in the power in Russia. So look, they pushed the Poles all the way back, and Zelechow is here. So what happened? I'm going to show you. Go back to the slide. The Bolsheviks enter Zelechow in August 13, 1920. Okay, and they make Stroll Hebner, which is the man in the picture here. They make a Jew mayor of Zelechow for the first time. 3 days later, and for the first time, a bomb falls in Zelechow. The Poles bomb some ammunition wagons that the Bolsheviks had in Zelechow, and 1 Jew is killed. Now we're gonna go back and show you. One Jew is killed, but that's it. Soon after, the Poles regain power over over Zelechow, and the Russians are gone again. What happened then? The people that the Bolsheviks made mayor, or they put them into the government positions and jobs during this short period of time, are threatened by the Polish people, by the Polish government, who returns now, as traitors. So they put them all in prison, and they're condemned to death. However, the Jewish community hires some lawyers, they get them out, and they had to escape Poland. Srul Hebner here manages to go to France, where he later becomes leader of the Zelechow group there. Okay. Now I want to show you really shortly a little a chart, a little table of the number of Jews in Zelechow. Okay. So as you can see, Jews have always been around 65%, around a 65% of the population in town. Okay. In 1939, when the Second World War started, there were almost 6,000 Jews living in Zelechow. Okay, out of 9,000 people. Okay. In 1941, later during the war, of course, we had a lot of refugees. We have 10,000 Jews. And in 1942, we have 13,000 Jews. And then, of course, they are all deported, sent to the extermination camps, and only 126 remain at the end of the war. Okay. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about the interwar years. Okay, what happened between World War I and World War II. This was kind of the best time for the Jews, because now they could really expand their cultural life. Okay, here are a few pictures of Jews walking happily in the streets of Zelechow. Okay. Here I'm showing you a picture of the Jewish community building in Zelechow. Okay. The Jewish community had a building, had an entire organization in Zelechow, and they were in charge of most of the things. They collected money, they gave donations, they sold, for example, matzah flour in Pesach, in Passover, now that we're almost arriving that time. They paid debts, they paid the government, they paid everything that was raised. They were the ones in charge, representing the Jews. Okay. This in the let's call it the 1920s and 30s. It's a time where there's a war between the old and new generation. Okay. I put this picture here to show this beautiful family. This is the Wierzchowski family, if somebody's here. And I'm showing that you can see the parents are both Hasidic. She's wearing a wiglet, not a wig, but a hair cover, a kupke. And he's, of course, dressed in his Hasidic clothes. While you can see that all of his children, none of them are dressing like this. So it's a time where many parents kick out their kids from their houses. It's a time, for example, when the rabbi, for example, the rabbi of Zelechow, he wanted to do a cherem, to exclude the Zionists in Zelechow from the Jewish community. it didn't happen, but you can see what was going on these times. Eventually, it becomes to kind of an agreement, not an agreement, but we can say that that's how they eventually lived. There was still a lot of, most of the Jews also were still Hasidic and religious, but we see more and more Jews in the modern ways. Okay. And as I said, the cultural life here sprouts, is an amazing time for their organizations, for their parties, for everything they do. Here is a beautiful picture of in Zelechow in 1929. Here is another one. Look at them all dressed up. Here is a Zionist group here. And maybe let's mention a few people here. This is Mordechai Ishtov, who came to Israel. This is Shloime Brainsky, the famous writer. His wife, Hanemalke Brainsky, they lived in Colombia. This too, this is the Iglitsky couple that they went to Venezuela. This is Avraham Yontev, who came to Colombia. So this is all young people, young Jews in Zelechow with ideals, and they're really enjoying life at this time. There's also another picture of some groups, Zionist group in Zelechow. They also have a soccer team in Zelechow. They create a soccer team. Here I put the names in the left of some of the people of those who survived from this picture. Many Jews also draft to the military. Here we see Shmuel Tichbroicher in the Polish army. Of course, many of us have heard the stories that many of them, cut a finger not to get drafted in the army and things like that. But half of them, so to say, did drafted to the army. And we're part of that life. And we also have two more famous writers. The one on the left is Hillel, and the one on the right is Shloime Brainsky. They both were great writers. Hillel died in the Holocaust, and Shloime Brainsky went to Colombia in the 1930s. Their books were famous and were later spread by all the Zelechower after the war. What else? In this time, and now maybe kind of to end this period, we have the immigration waves. Okay, although I'm going to talk about the immigration in another time, and in detail, or where they went and how and why they went everywhere. I'm just going to mention here shortly that there were two waves of immigration during these years. The first one during the 1920s, which I call the economic wave, which is that they left because of economic issues, and the one in the 1930s, which is because they left because of the anti-Semitism in Zelechow and in Poland, of course. Okay, perfect. So up to here is today's class, let's call it, of the history of Zelechow, of the Jewish history of Zelechow up to 1939. I hope you guys will join me for another time for the other classrooms that we're also doing of the time during the war, the Holocaust. We're also doing one about the emigration. If you guys are interested in knowing how your parents got where and why they left and everything. We're also going to talk about that. And we're going to have also another one about the lifestyle, the daily lives of the Jews in Zelechow, what they work, how they dressed, how they lived. Very, very, very interesting. So now, if anybody has questions, first of all, thank you, of course, everybody, for being here. And now if you have questions, I will appreciate if you can, at the bottom, we have this reaction, we have this emoji. If you can click on it, there's a raise hand, you can raise the hand, or you can write in the chat the question and I will reply to it, whatever is easier for you guys. Yes, we have, let's see, we have Josh, Josh Korn. Josh?
Yeah, good day. David,
Yes.
I got to tell you that I did not know any of this. None.
Really?
Nothing. Which is extremely disturbing considering that I'm a descendant of the Rebbe Rabinovich.
Wow.
Anyway, what I wanted to do
Mm-hmm.
was actually sneak in a plug for the person behind those photos.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And here, if you don't mind me sharing a photo,
Mm-hmm.
here it is. Right next to the church hall, still,
Mm-hmm.
sorry, I didn't want to do that. My mistake. Can you see what I'm doing?
No.
Oh, okay. Here. All right. Here we are. Can everyone see this?
Are you sharing your screen?
Yes, I think so.
No.
All right. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Share screen. Try that again. Doesn't work. Okay, never mind. I'll try that again offline. Anywho,
Mhm.
It is the window that you can see in so many of those photos is still there. That building is still there.
You mean of the photo studio in Zelechow?
That's right. Yep. All of this is so that I could plug one guy who otherwise wouldn't be remembered. His name is Baruch Malmoshta, and he's the photographer.
So yes, I forgot to say that. Zelechow had a Jewish photographer, and it's very clear, or it's very famous because the background of all his pictures, there's a window. So if you have a picture in an old picture in your albums and there's a window in the background, you can definitely know it was taken in Zelechow. That's kind of the signature of the picture. Okay, anybody else? Let's see. Yes, Reba.
I just wanted to say something that I had wondered why we have a picture of our mom's family with our grandparents, and they're dressed as Hasidim, and all the children are dressed modern. And I wondered about that, and you certainly explained that. I always was curious as to how that difference happened. So
wow. I'm happy to hear. Yes.
Almost exactly the same kind of picture.
Like that picture? Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Amazing. So yeah, it's I think we see it in a lot of pictures. I just picked that one because it was a lot of children, and you can see the parents dressed very religious. And I think it's very characteristic of those times and of those pictures, of the family pictures, to see that. So yeah.
David, can I just jump in there?
Yes, Miriam.
Just to back that one up with Gil Lehrer, the writer, we have exactly that. When he said he had problems, the picture that you showed him was when he was clean shaven, but he's from a Hasidic family very much. And he felt very guilty about having left his roots.
So yeah, so let's say a lot of them still felt that type of
Guilt.
yes, but they still had a deep feeling for the Jewish things. Many of them, most of them that most of the Zelechow that we all meant, our parents or grandparents, most of them were already not religious, but as a matter of fact, they all did grow up religious, and up to a certain age, they all went to a religious or to a Hasidic school. They went to the Cheder, they learned in the Shtibel, and they knew everything that a modern that today a religious or a Hasidic person knows. So it's incredible also to see that change that we see there. Okay, Sylvie, yes.
Hi, everybody. Was wondering about school and teachers. My father was saying that there was one teacher for, I don't remember, 5 schools, so 5 small towns, small cities, as you wish. He said that the teacher, the guy was going to one city one day a week, and so he was only one day in Zelechow. Do you know something about it?
So yes, as I said, so the cultural organizations, they brought some Jewish teachers for the first time for classes in Yiddish. And of course, the classes had to be, some classes were separated, men and women at the beginning. Later they were mixed, but they were schedules for the classes, of course. So yes, they were not every single day, and I wouldn't be surprised if the same teacher, as you say, had to go through different shtetls and every single day teach in a different place, because this, they were scarce at this time. Yeah. Thank you, John Fürstenberg.
Hi, David. It's a
Hi.
great discussion and great history. Just sort of reminded me, but from what I can see from my own history, is that my grandparents must have come to Zelechow in the 1900s, probably from Warsaw and Rudem. But it's interesting because I remember from my aunt saying that when the kids were older, because my grandfather also had a house or rented something in Warsaw, the kids would actually go to school in Warsaw. So it was interesting. There must have been an immigration to Zelechow during those 1900s. The Jews coming to do business there.
Okay, so it happens kind of both ways. That's a good point that you're mentioning it. I will mention it. I will expand it in another classroom, but I'll explain it to you shortly here. So indeed, many people came to Zelechow because if you live in a city, let's say like Warsaw, and it's the middle of the war, it's the economic situation in a big city is way worse than is in a little town. So many people came to the little towns during times of war. Also, many people also moved to Zelechow because it was the biggest Jewish center in the entire Garvolin County. Okay, that's also one reason. Another reason was when sometimes they married into somebody from Zelechow, and it was better to move there for a family business or something like that. Now, the move out of Zelechow to the big cities, it happened also because of the economic situation, that the parents send the children to learn a trade in the big city. People used to go to Warsaw or to Lodz, which had factories, to work there. And they always had a cousin or somebody who worked there, and they send their child or their son to learn, to be a shoemaker, to learn to be a tailor over that family. Okay, so eventually youngsters at the age of 16 spend a few of their years in the big cities learning a profession. And once they learned it, they could come back to Zelechow to work. Many of them remained in Warsaw, in the big cities, and only came back to town for the holidays. We also see that. Okay. Perfect. Yes, Phyllis.
It's interesting that you say that. My mother was a seamstress in Zelechow, and when she went to work, she was a hand seamstress, and they made, fine shirts and so forth. And when she was 17, her family sent her. She was one of a huge family. When she was 17, her family sent her to Warsaw to live with an aunt. And she worked there as a seamstress, lived with an aunt, and helped around the house and helped with the kids for her room and board, and sent most of her money back home. And so that indeed is what happened. An awful lot of, the young people ended up being shipped up to Warsaw because the tailor she had worked for in Zelechow, he was moving. He moved his operation to Warsaw, and then she moved with him. And ended up, she never did move back to Zelechow. She ended up staying in Warsaw and then went into the Soviet Union during the war, and was able to come to the United States then in the 1950s. But that really was a pattern that happened a lot.
Yeah, well, exactly. So the story that I told, I've been learned from people exactly like the story of your mother. Like Sylvie's father also happened the same, and other people that I've also heard that this was exactly what happened during these times. So yeah, not only boys, also women also as well. They went to a relative where they didn't have to. The parents sent money to for food and for a place to sleep, but they learn the trade for free, so to say. And later they stay there or they came back according to what they believe was better.
David, I think another story I think I've told to you was of the Perkol family, where I know that one of the daughters went to Rudin and actually married somebody from my family. So I'm assuming Shidduchim went on during that period of time as well.
So yes, as I told you, we have this, exactly this movement, and also move in and out because of marriages, as you say. So yeah, it's also a very interesting factor during these years. Let's see. Anyone else has a picture? See, Roberto, yes.
They have to unmute if they want to talk.
Let's see.
Yeah, that you told us that there was a major who was named by the Bolsheviks, and what I heard is one of my great grandfather was born in Russia and was fought for the White Russians. He was
again
put in the army as a White Russian, and they had to fight for the one they were put in the army they were put in. Yes.
Okay.
So I don't know how can that be that they were put in the army to fight for the White Russians, and then the Bolsheviks came and put in Zelechow, a Jewish Zelechow, as major, and what they did was the people who had fought for their enemies, for the enemies.
So actually, yeah, I think that's a very good question, because when that war started, the Polish-Soviet War in 1920, the Poles called for a mobilization, and a lot of Jews were drafted into the Polish army, and to fight the Bolsheviks. And then the Bolsheviks come and they make also the Jews they give them places. What they did is that they chose the Jews, mostly the Jews, because they were not Polish, so to say. So that's why. And also that's why when the Polish people came back, they said, you guys are traitors, because you're supposed to be of us, and you were part of them, and that's why they wanted to kill them. So yeah, but it's a very interesting. I didn't look on it in that way, as you say, but thank you, Roberto. Yes,
Daddy,
Anita.
can I just ask? So my question was, how many Jewish buildings are there still left today in Zelechow?
That's a good question. Most of the houses in Zelechow were made out of wood, and although there were still many Jewish houses made out of brick, after the Jews were deported, the Zelechow ghetto was liquidated. They destroyed the wooden houses. So many of the survivors, for example, when they returned, they couldn't find their houses, and they had to go sleep somewhere else. And that's why many of us, when we go back to Zelechow to find our father's house, we see a modern building or something completely different. Okay.
The cultural organization, that building, does that stand still or not?
Doesn't stand anymore.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Anita, yeah, you had a question?
Yes. Yes. Hi. I'm Farba Korman from the daughter from Yaakov Farba. Originally, now live in New York. First of all, David, I want to thank you so much. It's not a question, it's a compliment to you for everything you have done for putting this group and the very interesting lecture today. And just a little bit of a question. I don't have that much information about my grandfather. I understand that he worked in the shul there, the Orthodox temple. He was very Orthodox. Menahem Monish Farba Korman. No, Korman was my grandmother. Farba. And I was just wondering if there is any information about the shuls there, who was assistant to the rabbi, or maybe he was the shamish of the temple, maybe? Is there any information about that?
Good question. I don't have a real list of who was in every single, because as I told you, yes, we had the main synagogue, but we also had the little societies. And something I maybe forgot to mention was that in Zelechow, there were many shtibler, which is like Hasidic houses. So yeah, so there were groups of Jews that they followed the rabbi from a different town. So they all pray separately. So they, at the same time in Zelechow, we could have at least 20 different praying houses. So yeah, so we don't really have a list of who was who in every single place, but one of the survivors did write a description of the main people in each one of them. So I will have to look if maybe your grandfather is mentioned there.
How do I find out?
I will check for you and I'll let you know.
How can I find that? Oh, thank you very much. And again, thank you for everything.
You're most welcome. Thank you, Anita. Do we have anybody else?
I just want to ask.
Yes.
Can I ask one more question? Do you know how many children or young people would have gone to a public school there, to a Polish school?
That's a good question, because we don't have, like, I haven't found any records on like the number of people who are going to a public school. There were not that much. I could say there were not that much. because still most of the boys still went to religious schools, and the girls went to also a religious school. I could maybe estimate maybe 20%, maybe.
Can I just add, David, is it in Zelechow? Because in other towns, there's also schools starting to teach modern Hebrew. And I can't remember, there's someone famous who said they had to leave it because, of course, they were paying. So I think there's also different levels of how much each school charges. And that is going to be a separation between people.
So I don't know if that's a good question. I don't know exactly what, what they taught. I'm pretty sure they did not teach Hebrew, because Hebrew was only taught in the Zionist organizations in those times. Hebrew, did not become a school thing until much later. They mostly learn in Yiddish, which was different because on the religious schools,
I agree, but there were
in Hebrew.
There were a few schools teaching modern Hebrew. I don't know if it's more in Lithuania, but what was said very clearly is that they were charging, and that, and by the sounds of it, they were charging quite a bit. So you had to be able to afford to go to those.
None of the schools in Zelechow were for free. Also, the religious schools, the parents had to pay. And every single year during Pesach, when the school started, they had to choose if their son keeps going to learn by this rabbi or goes to the other rabbi. And some children changed from, had 5 different rabbis during their childhood because the rabbi hit them, or it was too expensive, or something didn't work out well there, and things like that. But yes, they all had to pay. Definitely it was cheaper than going to most likely a private or combined school, as Riva is asking. Yeah.
Well, I know our mom did go to a public school. She went to a Polish school, but she didn't last very long there because she said the children used to torment her and were very anti-Semitic. And so she couldn't stay there very long, but she did learn to read and write Polish. Our mom also, of course, read and wrote and spoke Yiddish fluently, and she did read Hebrew. So she learned to read Hebrew as well. I know she spoke about a young rabbinic student used to come to the house to teach her, but she told her father that he would chepe her. And so her father sent him away.
Wow. I didn't know. That was really interesting. I didn't know, but I would imagine that the people had private teachers back then that came to teach him. And yes, many of our parents and grandparents, they knew and spoke Polish also because of this, because they went to a school. Many only spoke and didn't read or write because they only knew it from business matters. But yes, if your mom knew how to read and write, she definitely read it, learned it there in the public school. Do we have any other questions, people?
David,
my father was saying that he went to a Polish school, and so he learned to write and to read in Polish. And he said that in the morning, that was the prayer, the Polish students, pupils were praying. So the Jews were standing up silently at the rear of the classroom, waiting for them to finish the prayer. But he never spoke about bothering or something because they were Jews. That doesn't mean that they were not, but he never tell.
Interesting.
Sylvie, our grandmother's maiden name was Drumlevich.
Oh, so we are related.
Right.
Pleased to meet you.
You too.
Hi, David. My name is Leah Benincasa.
Hi.
Hi. Are there any Jews left in Zelechow? Today?
Not today. No.
Not today. And what condition is that cemetery? Do you know by any chance?
Okay, so the cemetery has today around 100 stones, tombstones. Okay, is a big kind of plot there. So 100 for you may sound a lot, but for that place they're all kind of spread, so it looks very empty, so to say.
Right.
We have photographed all the tombstones that are left there. Sebastian has photographed them, and we have them, so we know the names of the people who are gone, who are there still, if you're also looking for.
Right. And is there a list anywhere of the people that lived in Zelechow and perished?
We have a list of residents. Yes, there's a list of residents in Zelechow. Who perished? That's a good question. We don't have a list of who was in the ghetto during the war. That would be great. However, we only know, most of the survivor lists that I made myself have been from some searching in documents and other places, or by searching Zelechow and finding who's from there and who survived here and there.
Right.
That's it, but there was no list of who was deported from Zelechow, so we can know, exactly. Yeah, he was gone there, or maybe he escaped. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, David, and I look forward to your next class.
Thank you, Leah. Thank you.
I was born in Israel, by the way.
Wow. Thank you so much.
Okay. Tada.
Do we have any more questions, guys? I don't want to keep you guys for too late, but okay, we have Roberto. Okay, and after Roberto, if you guys have more questions, I feel you can also write them in our chat, in our Facebook group, and I will gladly reply to every single of you. Okay. Yes.
I have a question.
Okay, Roberto, let's get Sebastian and then we do you, okay? Don't worry.
Yes, it's okay.
Yeah. Okay, Sebastian? Yes.
Roberto first.
Okay.
Roberto wants to go first?
Yeah, I only want to know, would you advise to go to visit Zelechow for the sending of the survivors? To go to visit,
do you ask me if I recommend to go? I didn't hear.
Yes, or what you have to take into account.
I always recommend going. I think it's although maybe I would say there's not that many Jewish things in Zelechow. There's still, still when you go there, you can at least figure and see by yourself the place where your family was born and grew up in, and how big or how small, as you see, it was the place. And I feel it's also kind of, at least a lot of people here feel it more as like a closure with the thing. Many people feel it as like a debt to their families to go at least once in their lives to see the town or visit them, or or something that doesn't mean I'm forcing you to go, but it's a good.
אני רוצה להגיד את זה בעברית אם אפשר. אני מסכימה בדיוק למה שאתה אמרת, וכשאני נסעתי לשם, נסעתי בדיוק בגלל ההרגשה הזאת, הלוא אני לא אראה שם שום דבר, וגם אבא שלי לא דיבר על שום דבר, אבל בכל זאת זה לסגור מעגל, לדעת איפה הם גדלו, איך נראה המקום, בכלל, כן, לראות את המקום, כן, וזה מאוד מעניין, מאוד.
Okay, so yeah, Vora said that exactly the same. She went for closure because she when she went there, she thought that, she went with the thought that there was nothing left. and it was mostly exactly to see where her parents lived and how they lived and everything. I have sent a lot of people maybe here with Sebastian to a tour in Zelechow. If you're interested, Sebastian is the recommended tour guide. He's here, you know, sending kisses in the group. Okay. The tour, if Sebastian can also mention it later, he will take you, he will show you, he will tell you a little bit about where everything is located. He will take you to the cemetery, and if we're lucky, to the archives in Zelechow to see if you can find something, but we don't promise.
If you give me a voice,
yes.
I'm not a very specialist of Jewish genealogy or Jewish history of Zelechow, but you can meet me. I can bring you to the places where the Jews were. So this is, you know, this is the advantage, not to be alone in the city. Yeah.
Keep going. Yes.
It's okay. You hear
yeah,
me?
keep going. Yeah, I
Yeah.
hear you.
Yeah. So every time when David recommends me, it's a very big pleasure for me to make you acquainted with the city of Zelechow. You need to remember that the correct spelling is Zelechow. Zelechow, not
I mentioned it at the beginning. Yes, you missed it, but I mentioned at the beginning how we pronounce it differently.
I'm very sorry. I lost in the beginning.
It's okay, don't worry.
But I wanted to join your webinar to be here, and in next week, David, I hope we got people from Colombia in Zelechow.
Oh yes, we're having people from Colombia next week in Zelechow. That's true. Yes. Chaya, do you have a question? Yes.
Now a question. אני מדבר בעברית בינתיים, ואתה...
I will translate. Okay.
I was with Sebastian in a tour in Zelechow, and it was very, very interesting. And he took us, I went with my son and my daughter, and it was very, it was before the corona, 2.5 years, like I think so. And it was very מרגש, לא? שכחתי את המילה. Emotional. And אני ממליצה לנסוע, כמו שנתנו לי גם את הכתובת של אבא שלי, את הבית שאבא שלי היה משלחוב, קראו לו שמואל לקסמן, והוא נתנו לי את הכתובת בוורשה, נתנו לי את הכתובת שלו בחיון, והגעתי לבית שהוא היה גר, וראיתי שבונים בית חדש, והסבירו לי שבדיוק לפני שנה הרסו את הבית, ובגוגל מצאתי איך היה נראה הבית הישן. והייתי בכל המקומות שדויד הראה לנו, את המרכז והבית קברות כמובן, הבית קברות עושה מאוד, איך אומרים? הוא צובט את הלב.
עצוב ביותר.
עצוב ביותר, כי...
David, is something better than me?
Okay. So I will translate a little bit, okay?
Chaya something better than me?
No. She said that it was a great experience that she was with you in Zelechow. She says that when she went to Poland, she received the address of her father. She went to Warsaw, and in Warsaw they gave her the address of her father in Zelechow, and she went to the house. And when she went to the house, they were just building a new house. And they told her that a year before, right, they had destroyed the previous house. So she was able still to go to Google Maps and see how the previous house looked before. Yeah, but it was a very good experience for her, and she said that the cemetery was mostly touching for her. There you go, Sebastian.
Monica.
¿Qué?
David, I think I
Okay.
said,
חיה,
Yes.
גם את מירושלים, נכון?
David,
Yes, John.
I think I
איפה את בירושלים?
sent you the information that my aunt, after the war, actually sold her house. She came back to Zelechow and actually sold the house and had closure that way. So it was another interesting story.
So yeah, that also happened. Many people, or at least Sebastian can also say it, that a lot of Polish people are afraid that we go and take the houses back. And I told Sebastian that, first of all, it will take too long for actually to maybe do that. If it's possible, it will cost too much money to sell it for such a cheap price. So it's not even worth it. So that's why I tell them, and I also tell you guys the same. Many of the survivors, when they came back to Zelechow, they sold their properties again. Okay, so there's also many of us that have nothing to actually go and ask for.
David, my friend.
Yes.
If you permit me, we need to remember that people in Zelechow, they are not afraid a lot of regaining the buildings. We are the Poland. We are not a diversified. We are not divided by nations. So if we see somebody who is speaking other language than we are in Polish, then we are thinking, where we are from, yeah. So we people in Zelechow don't afraid of a lot of regaining the building. Of course, maybe a little bit, but they are a little shocked. I would say shocked that somebody visit a very small town as Zelechow is. I don't think that they maybe the owners, maybe a little bit afraid of, but I don't think so. The main sentence I would say is, don't afraid to visit Zelechow. Don't afraid. We are friendly.
There you go.
Zelechow is friendly. Nobody attack you. Nobody. If
that
somebody,
is also true.
Yeah, if somebody even think about it, I'm the first that you defense. Okay, don't be afraid.
You're
Don't
the
be
protector of the Jews in Zelechow.
Yeah, of course. Don't be afraid. We are friendly.
Very good to
Even
hear.
now. Even now.
Okay.
Okay, David.
Perfect.
I wanted I just want to say that this is not, somebody strange is walking around the city, the town, and all you need, afraid of something. No, we are calm here, especially with me. I would explain everybody in Polish that we are friendly. That's the thing. Don't
Perfect.
be
Yes.
afraid. Don't be afraid. Visit Zelechow. You are more than welcome. We are our friends. I invite you all to Zelechow. Come to me. I will show you Zelechow.
Now we need to plan a big tour to Zelechow, I guess.
We don't have a lot of hotels.
Perfect. Perfect.
We need to think about the meeting that the Zelechow meeting that we take 200 West hotel. That would be nice.
That could be a good idea. Okay, perfect.
David, I have one more. David, excuse me. I have one more
Yes.
question.
Okay.
I know where the street that my father was born in Zelechow. Now, how do I contact Sebastian? Can you look it up and see what's the number? He lived on Smoska Street. Smoska Street. Could Sebastian look it up for and get the number or no? I mean, I would contact.
Yeah, we can contact him. I also have a map of the old, because some of the streets used to have different names than today. So we also need to check which street how the street is called today. That's also it's a good thing. So Sebastian can help you with all that.
Okay.
Or you can also ask me, and also I can help.
It's not easy to match the streets before the war and that are now, because before and after the war, streets have changed.
I see.
Because some of buildings were destroyed, and authorities needed to rename the streets, rename the numbers.
I see.
And that's true what David said, that some authorities changed the names and the numbers of the buildings has changed.
I see.
And because, in my opinion, because people usually are afraid of regaining buildings. The house of Zelechow was Jewish. It's obvious.
Okay.
And we cannot, in simple things, we cannot identify the exact number of the property.
I got it. Okay. Thank you.
So we can only, you can only see the street.
Right.
We can record the buildings.
Right.
And suppose that this building or this building was yours.
I see. Okay.
We can. I am trying to get map that will confirm that, but it's not easy. Not yet. Not now. Maybe in future. But at the moment it's not simple. Very not.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Yeah, quick note on that comment.
Yes.
I was in Zelechow in 1974 with my parents, and the number of the house, I don't remember, it was 7 or 9. And a couple of years ago, somebody showed a picture of the same house with a different number, claiming that that was the house, and it wasn't. So the numbers have been changed, not right after the Second World War, but sometime after 1974 for sure. In my case.
That's a very funny story. That's a very funny case of the two families, the Gubereks and the Rochberger in Costa Rica. They were both, they both live next to each other. And I've seen that sometimes when they went to Zelechow, they took a picture of the house, they took a picture of the wrong house. They took a picture of the Guberek's house instead of their own house. So, but it's good that at least we could figure out only because you went so long ago. If not, we wouldn't have noticed that. Interesting. Good. I still will hear a lot of people, and I feel like a lot of people have a lot of questions. So I don't want to keep you guys up. It's Sunday here in Israel. It's a little late. And maybe you guys. Yes. What?
Vamos.
Okay, so I'll post in the Zelechow group if you guys have any more questions, and you guys can let me know there. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, David.
Thank you very much, everybody, for coming.
David, we
really appreciate it.
David, it was great. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ivo.
Bye, 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 bye.
6:30 in the morning in Australia.
Bye.
Time for a coffee in Australia.
Sebastian, bye.
אין עליך.